a calculated revenge that uses numbers as clues to deliver justice beyond the law. This film is set in Greece in 1987 when a young girl celebrates her 10th birthday with her family. On that special day, her grandfather gives her 2 pendants, each engraved with the face of a Greek philosopher, symbolizing the meaning of true love. The girl wears one of the pendants while keeping the other with the hope that one day she will give it to someone she truly loves. 20 years later, in 2007, the story shifts to a woman named Cleo, who is celebrating her 30th birthday at a nightclub with the people closest to her, including her boyfriend Manthos and her best friend Danai. After the party ends, Manthos takes Cleo on a motorcycle ride and stops on a quiet road with the intention of proposing to her. In a moment filled with happiness, Cleo accepts his proposal without hesitation. However, that joy quickly turns into horror when a speeding car crashes into them, turning a beautiful moment into a tragic accident. The story then jumps 8 years later to New Year's Eve in 2015. At this point, we are introduced to Professor Dimitri Lainis, a criminology lecturer who lives a rather isolated life. Every day after finishing his activities, he goes to the hospital to accompany his father, who has been in a coma for 4 years due to a hit-and-run incident. On January 1st, 2015, while others are celebrating the new year, Dimitri chooses to spend his night beside his father. At the same time, in another place, a mysterious death occurs. A judge named Christina de Sila is found murdered by an unknown figure who later becomes known as John. Due to the absence of witnesses and CCTV footage, the police conclude that Christina's death was most likely an accident, assuming she slipped and fell down the stairs. However, a few days later, on January 4th, a similar case occurs again. A doctor named Alexis is found brutally murdered in his office, and it is strongly suspected that the same person is responsible. This case then draws the attention of the university where Dimitri teaches. He is contacted by the rector Aristotelis, who has a close connection with Apostolos, the deputy head of the homicide division. Dimitri is asked to assist in analyzing the case as a criminology expert. Without wasting any time, Dimitri goes straight to the crime scene. There, he finds a sentence written in ancient Greek on the carpet of Alexis's office, which translates to, "Say what should be said and do not listen to what is unnecessary." The condition of the victim is extremely disturbing, with his throat slit, his hands stabbed, and 4 of his fingers cut off. Another unusual detail is an envelope found in the victim's pocket, completely clean without any bloodstains, containing €220 banknotes. All of these details further strengthen the suspicion that the murder was not spontaneous, but rather had a specific meaning and purpose behind it. After returning to his apartment, Dimitri tries to find more information about Alexis on the internet, but he finds nothing suspicious. The next day, he meets Apostolos at the police station to discuss the findings from the crime scene. Based on his initial analysis, Dimitri believes that the motive behind the murder is most likely revenge, considering how brutal and well-planned it was, making it unlikely to be driven by momentary emotions or personal matters such as romance. He also highlights the presence of certain patterns at the scene, such as the severed fingers, the €220 cash, and the envelope that remained clean from blood, all of which appear to be deliberate clues left behind by the killer. To assist the investigation, the police eventually grant Dimitri full access to Alexis's case files so he can analyze them more deeply. As he examines every detail, Dimitri discovers that the writing found at the crime scene is actually a quote from Pythagoras, an ancient Greek philosopher, and laboratory results confirm that the message was written using Alexis's own blood, indicating that the killer deliberately left a symbolic message, most likely while wearing gloves to avoid leaving any traces. Time passes, and on March 12th, a third murder occurs, further reinforcing the terrifying pattern. This time, the victim is a lawyer named Demos, who was found dead in hotel room number 220. Before his death, Demos is believed to have been injected with a high dose of anesthetic, then his tongue is cut off, ultimately leading to his death from severe bleeding. Just like in the previous cases, another message in ancient Greek is found at the scene, written using the victim's blood, once again a quote from Pythagoras, meaning that hiding the truth is like burying gold. Seeing this increasingly clear pattern, Dmitri becomes convinced that the murders of Alexis and Deimos are connected and carried out by the same person. This discovery reminds Apostolos of an earlier case at the beginning of the year that was initially ruled as a suicide, specifically on January 2nd. In that case, a message in ancient Greek was also found, meaning that all are destined to die. The victim was a classical literature graduate named Tom. However, after Dmitri carefully re-examines the details, he notices something unusual. The time of death was recorded at 2:20, which once again points to the number 220. This pattern feels far too consistent to be a coincidence, especially when linked to hotel room 220 and the 220 euros found earlier. From this, Dmitri begins to conclude that Tom's death was not a suicide, but a murder carried out by John. In the midst of the increasingly complex investigation, Dmitri receives a call from the hospital informing him that his father's condition is worsening. The doctor explains that his father has suffered a severe stroke and is entirely dependent on life support, with no chance of recovery. The doctor even suggests that Dmitri consider turning off the machines to end his father's suffering, but Dmitri is not yet able to make that decision. At the same time, Dmitri's curiosity about the number 220 grows stronger as it keeps appearing in every murder case. His search then leads him to the discovery that Deimos had been involved in numerous serious criminal cases, even manipulating more than 30 cases he handled, ranging from extortion and murder to drug-related crimes. It is also revealed that Deimos had worked with a judge, none other than Christina de Sila, the first victim who was previously believed to have died from an accident. This makes Dmitri begin to doubt the initial conclusion of the police. He finds it strange that Christina, given her age, chose to take the stairs to her penthouse when she could have used the elevator. This suspicion leads Dmitri to meet Christina's husband together with Apostolos. While inside the elevator, they discover another crucial clue, a quote from Pythagoras stating that everything happens according to numbers and that one is the beginning of everything. From this point on, Dmitri starts to understand that the numbers appearing in each murder are not coincidences, but part of a pattern deliberately designed by the killer. Even small details, such as the elevator's maximum capacity of 220 kilograms, further reinforce the idea that the number holds significant meaning in this series of crimes. Dmitri and Apostolos become convinced that John is not killing randomly, but has carefully planned everything, even staging some deaths to appear as accidents to avoid suspicion in the early stages. Even so, Dmitri still cannot fully determine Alexis's exact connection to the entire case, while Apostolos is instructed to focus on investigating Tom's death, which is still officially considered a suicide. Feeling that his investigation has reached a dead end, Dmitri meets Aristoteles to discuss his confusion, especially regarding the connection between the victims, Pythagoras, and the recurring number 220. After hearing this, Aristoteles suggests that Dmitri consult a mathematician he knows, a man who also has a strong interest in ancient Greek history. Coincidentally, the expert is attending a mathematics conference in Paris. Without wasting any time, Dmitri immediately travels there, hoping to find a clearer explanation of the connection between Pythagoras and the number 220, which appears to be the key to the entire series of murders. Upon arriving in Paris, Dmitri finally meets the mathematician recommended by Aristoteles. From this meeting, he begins to gain a much clearer understanding of the connection between Pythagoras and the number 220, which had long been a mystery in the series of murders. The expert then explains a concept from the followers of Pythagoras in ancient times known as heteros ego, or in English, the other me. This concept refers to amicable numbers, a pair of numbers that share a rare and unique relationship. This relationship occurs when the sum of all the proper divisors of one number results in its pair. To make it easier to understand, he explains that the number 220 has proper divisors such as 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 11, 20, 22, 44, 55, and 110, and when all of these are added together, the result is 284. On the other hand, 284 has proper divisors of 1, 2, 4, 71, and 142, which, when summed up again, result in 220. From this reciprocal relationship, 220 and 284 are known as amicable numbers or heteros ego. This explanation becomes a turning point for Dimitri, as he finally understands that 220 is not just a random number, but a clue pointing to its pair, 284. With this new understanding, Dimitri realizes that to uncover the full pattern, he must find where the number 284 appears in the case. At the same time, after Apostolos speaks with Tom's parents, an important fact is revealed that connects all the victims to a single incident in the past. Apostolos then explains to Dimitri about a hit-and-run case that occurred years earlier, right after Manthos proposed to Cleo. In that incident, Cleo died at the scene, while Manthos survived but suffered severe injuries and required long-term intensive care. The driver responsible was a man named Tony Marnellis, the son of a wealthy businessman, who was heavily intoxicated at the time. However, instead of being punished, Tony managed to escape legal consequences by manipulating the facts. He claimed that Manthos and Cleo were riding recklessly and crashed into his car, and this statement was supported by Tom, who was in the car with him at the time. Not only that, Christina de Sila served as the judge in the case, Demos acted as Tony's lawyer, and Alexis played the role of the doctor who provided false medical testimony to claim that Tony was not driving under the influence. From this, it becomes clear that all the victims who were later killed had been involved in the same case and had helped the guilty party escape punishment. Another crucial detail that strengthens this pattern is the discovery that Cleo wore a pendant engraved with the number 284. This directly links the symbolic numbers in the murders to the concept of amicable numbers, further reinforcing the idea that the killer is someone very close to Cleo and associated with the number 220 as its pair. Not long after, Apostolos receives news that Tony has mysteriously disappeared within the last 24 hours, raising concern that he may be the next target. However, Dimitri sees it differently. Based on the pattern he has uncovered, he believes that the murders do not occur randomly, but follow a specific sequence. He explains that the number 284 has 5 proper divisors, 1, 2, 4, 71, and 142, and these numbers appear to correspond to the timing of each murder. When arranged, the pattern becomes clear. Christina dies on the first day of 2015, January 1st. Tom is found dead on January 2nd. Alexis is killed on January 4th. And Demos is murdered on March 12th, which is the 71st day of the year. Following this pattern, the next murder is likely to occur on the 142nd day, which falls on May 22nd. From this, Dimitri concludes that Tony has not yet been killed, but is simply waiting for his turn according to the pattern set by the killer. After gaining a clearer picture, Dimitri decides to meet Manthos in person. At first, he is not allowed to enter, but after mentioning that Tony has disappeared, he is finally permitted to see him.
Ο Μάνθος θα σε δει τώρα.
There, Dimitri witnesses Manthos' extremely fragile condition. Since the accident 8 years ago, Manthos had been in a coma for 4 months and had undergone 11 surgeries, especially on his face, which was severely damaged. Now, he can only sit in a wheelchair and depends entirely on his mother for care. In this condition, Manthos insists that he could not possibly be the killer due to his physical limitations. However, he still vividly remembers the tragic incident that took everything from him. He reveals that during the accident, Tony showed no empathy at all. He refused to take them to the hospital because he did not want his car to get dirty, and instead left them at the scene along with Tom. That painful memory continues to haunt Manthos to this day. He still relives the tragedy in his dreams every night and cannot forget the loss of Cleo, the woman he deeply loved. Moreover, Cleo had a big dream of becoming an anesthesiologist, a dream that was never fulfilled because of the tragedy. After his meeting with Manthos, Dimitri receives a reprimand from Rector Aristotelis for acting outside of procedure by visiting Manthos' residence without permission. He is even asked to stop his investigation, especially since his attitude is starting to be seen as no longer objective. He is considered to be justifying John's actions in killing the victims under the pretense of delivering justice, and also seen as too emotionally involved because he relates Manthos' case to his own father, who is also a victim of a hit-and-run incident. However, all of these debates seem to be answered on May 22nd. As Dimitri had predicted based on the numerical pattern he discovered, Tony Marnellis is finally found murdered in an abandoned building where he had been hiding. When they arrive at the scene, Tony's condition is horrific, with both of his hands chained and his body covered in blood. Just like the previous cases, a message written in ancient Greek using the victim's blood is found again, which means what I should have done but did not do and what I did but should not have done. This finding further confirms that the murder carries a moral message intended by the killer. From the forensic examination, it is revealed that the killer has a deep understanding of anesthetic substances, as different types of anesthetics are found in each victim's body. On Tony's body, there is also a very striking detail, a license plate with the number ending in 220 embedded in his chest. All of this further strengthens Dimitri's theory that the series of murders follows a specific pattern, and with Tony's death, the sequence has most likely come to an end. Apostolos expresses his gratitude to Dimitri for his help and asks him to leave the rest of the investigation to the police.
Δημήτρη, σε ευχαριστώ πολύ για όλα.
Even so, Dimitri cannot fully let go of his thoughts about the case.
Υπάρχει τελικά Θεός. Απλά αργεί να αντιδράσει. Είναι η μοναδική χαρά που πήραμε τα τελευταία χρόνια ομάδα.
His curiosity drives him to visit Cleo's grave, where he finds a pendant engraved with the number 284. He then speaks again with Aristoteles and asks what someone should do if they want to fix a world full of injustice. Aristoteles answers that a person must use their abilities for good, but must not fall into crime or create new forms of injustice. Those words continue to echo in Dimitri's mind until he forms one final assumption. He believes that the killer will appear again at a specific time on the 220th day of the year, which falls on August 8th. That night, Dimitri watches Cleo's grave from a distance, and his assumption proves correct when someone arrives to visit. Without wasting any time, Dimitri approaches the figure and states that none of this is a coincidence, that the numbers 220 and 284 are connected, and that the person who came that night must have a direct connection to everything that has happened. Hearing that, the figure slowly removes the hoodie covering the face, and in that moment, everything is finally revealed. The person who had been known all this time as John the Killer turns out to be Danae, Cleo's closest friend. The little girl who celebrated her birthday at the beginning of the story is actually Danae, and on that day she gave the pendant with the number 284 to her dearest friend, Cleo. From that moment on, they were always together, growing up side by side through school and into adulthood, becoming inseparable until a tragic event tore everything apart and separated them forever. Danae is the one who feels the deepest impact of the injustice that followed Cleo's death. The film then shows how Danae systematically executes each person involved in the hit-and-run case. She explains that none of this would have happened if the legal system had worked fairly. According to her, justice had already failed from the very beginning. Tony Marnellis, who was clearly guilty, managed to walk free simply because he had money and power. With that, he was able to twist the facts, bribe others, and make those who were supposed to uphold the truth defend him instead. The judge, the lawyer, even the doctor were all involved in constructing lies that ultimately destroyed other people's lives. For Danae, what happened was not just an accident, but proof that justice can be bought and truth can be buried as long as power stands behind it. That is why she chose to take on a role that the law failed to fulfill, ensuring that everyone involved would face the consequences of their actions. When Dimitri asks if she has ever thought about forgiving them, Danae calmly replies that she only did what she believed had to be done, and that forgiveness is not something for her to decide. That answer leaves Dimitri silent because for the first time he truly understands that this case is not simply about right or wrong, but about the consequences of injustice. In the end, Dimitri chooses not to report Danae to the police and lets her go, not because he justifies her actions, but because he understands the reasons behind them.
Και υπάρχει τώρα να σε βοηθήσει να σκοτώσει 5 άτομα.
Είναι εύκολο να λες πάνω στα νεύρα σου.
After everything that has happened, Dimitri slowly begins to accept the reality he has been avoiding. He finally makes the most difficult decision of his life, to let his father go. With a heavy heart, he asks the doctor to turn off the life support machines so that his father no longer has to suffer. In the midst of his grief, Aristoteles tries to comfort Dimitri. Not long after, Aristoteles gives him an envelope sent to the university in Dimitri's name. When he opens it, he finds a pendant engraved with the number 1210 sent by Danae, which is the amicable pair of 1184. The film then closes with Dimitri hanging the pendant on a board alongside childhood photos of Danae and Cleo, and the story comes to an end.